Hi, I'm Lauren O'Reilly. I'm a qualified pharmacist and your host of the Wellness Script podcast. Today's guest is Catherine O'Keefe, also known as the Wellness Warrior and Ireland's leading menopause coach. We'll be talking about all things perimenopause and menopause. Here is my conversation with Catherine. Catherine, welcome to the Wellness Script podcast.
Thanks, Lauren, and lovely to be with you. And it's lovely to meet you finally in person.
Finally, we get to meet each other, Catherine. It's such a pleasure to have you. You are one of the most well-known voices in menopause, perimenopause. So I think we're going to have a really valuable conversation today about how we can support women or how women can support themselves in this journey. But I think a really great place to start might be, what brought you into this space? Like, why is it so important to you? Why are you so passionate about it?
Yeah, and I think the $1 million question, right? But I guess my journey to here was not straightforward. And when I was younger, I had so many issues with my periods, with menstrual health. And I remember, if we go back like that far to adolescence, I used to get like a period maybe 2-3 times a year when I started. And when I did get them, they were really painful. And everyone else here, you know, any doctor I went to was kind of like, it's in your head, you'll sort yourself out, whatever. I went to college. After college, I moved to London. And within about 4 months of living in London, I was diagnosed with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. And I guess that was really, for me, just a real start of a personal journey through really kind of understanding your hormones and how important they are. And I guess that continued on into, you know, obviously starting a family and all of that. And then, you know, I thought I knew a fair bit about the hormones at that stage.
Yeah.
And then, of course, this lovely uninvited guest called Perimenopause knocks on the door. And at the time, I was a director in investment banking. I'd been in banking for over 24 years at that stage. And my God, but I was hit with brain fog. I was hit with heavy periods and I was hit with brain fog. And those two symptoms, when you're working in an environment as intense and kind of high pressured as investment banking, it doesn't lend itself to perimenopause. So what I found at the time was no one was talking about it. This was back in 2013. And I even found, you know, friends of mine, I'd kind of broached the subject. They were like, no, but sure, we're not in our 50s. We're not having hot flushes. No, we're not talking about this. So it really was my own experience then. I was just kind of, why is no one talking about it? So I started blogging and one thing went to the next. And then I started talking in workplaces. I was the first person in Ireland in 2018 to talk in workplaces around menopause.
So recent.
Yeah, yeah. And going around the country, you know, doing talks all over the country. And so really it was my own personal experience because I just couldn't understand why no one was talking about it.
Like 2018, like for you to be the first person going around talking about this is like, obviously that's a long time now in terms of the work that you've done is incredible. But it in terms of like the fact that you felt that there was such a gap, even so in such recent times, is crazy. Yeah,
like there was like, I even remember back like when I was in the bank at the time, like, and we were really good for extra supports for staff, you know, employee assistance program, supports, parental supports, all that type of thing. But there wasn't anything around, you know, at that time, there wasn't any conversations really around miscarriage. There wasn't conversations around menstruation. And there definitely wasn't conversations around menopause. And I know for a fact, I can still remember 2 or 3 people that worked in the office. And I know for a fact they were well ahead of me and they were well into, I would say, probably post-menopause. But again, I don't even know, did they even understand what was happening? And that was back in 2013, 2014, you know.
So was it just shut up and put up? Like, just say nothing about it, even though you're struggling.
Yeah, and I think like, you know, I can remember in particular one day, there was a big meeting in the office and I was kind of shown figures and stuff from my group. I had a global group at the time and Oh, geez, every piece of information. You may as well have just opened the window in the room because it just went. And I was like a rabbit in headlights. Yeah. And like I was, well used to presenting to, senior people across all levels of the organization. So when that started to happen, like it really impacted me because I then started to question like, what's happening? And then it was like kind of, have I early onset dementia?
Yeah.
And it really impacted my confidence and my self-esteem and my ability also to do my job. And when that starts to get in on you, it really creeps in and it kind of gnaws away at you. And that's why I always kind of say when I talk about menopause, I always say it's so like the iceberg analogy. Because you can see if someone's having a hot flush, but you don't always see the anxiety, all the other things that are happening beneath the surface.
When it comes to nutrition nowadays, we're not just trying to avoid deficiencies, we're trying to optimize how we feel day to day. A lot of the people that I speak to are genuinely doing their best. They're eating well, exercising, getting decent sleep, but still feel like they don't quite have the energy, immune resilience, or overall balance that they would like. And that's one of the reasons I've partnered with Sona, Ireland's favourite vitamins, as the sponsor of today's podcast. They're an Irish family-run company with over 40 years experience, and everything they do is evidence-based, which really matters to me. With over 150 science-backed products, their range covers everything from immune and energy support to omega-3s, digestive health, bone and heart health, as well as pregnancy, fertility and children's vitamins, all manufactured, of course, to the highest manufacturing standards and repeatedly tested for purity and potency. You'll find Sona in local pharmacies, select health stores nationwide, or you can explore the full range at sona.ie. Okay, back to the episode.
Yes, of course, Catherine. And I suppose if we think back to the version of you that was experiencing that brain fog, what would you have told that version of you now, knowing what you know? Or would you have spoken to her a year before that? Or,
I would love to have known a year before.
Yes.
I would absolutely love to have known. And that's where I think the education, the younger we are, the better. And, I've written several letters to the minister in relation to getting it into the SPHE curriculum, which even, not that you want to understand all the ins and outs of it, but at least you'd know the word. It would be in the back of your head and you'd kind of think when you're older, I remember that being mentioned in school. Yeah. But also it would help you understand maybe what your mum is going through, because the chances are, for every mother going through perimenopause or menopause, there might be a child in the house. Yes. Not always, but just, and it's reverse journeys. In adolescence, the hormones are coming up, and in perimenopause, the hormones are going down. So I think the one thing I would love to have really known what was coming. I had an idea, but I really didn't understand the extent of it. And I very much thought it was out in the distance. And certainly my mum would have gone into surgical menopause, but there wouldn't have been any, I'd say she wasn't even told what was happening. I can only remember her, particularly on a Sunday afternoon, she was cooking dinner. I can remember her getting hot flushes near the oven or in the kitchen, things like that. But I'd say other than that, I'd say she had no idea what was happening. So I think to know ahead so that we can be proactive as opposed to reactive, I think that's the greatest gift we can give ourselves, but also give the generation that are coming after us.
Definitely. And in terms of, if you think to your specific symptoms at the time, what would you have liked a GP to prescribe, or what would you have, or what support would have benefited you the most given what you were experiencing?
I think back then, probably my two key things, the flooding, the heavy periods, and the brain fog, which then led to anxiety. They were probably the three things for me. In relation to the heavy periods, I had about 2 or 3 months of really heavy periods, and I was very lucky. I tuned in with a really good acupuncturist.
Okay.
And I found acupuncture really helped me and kind of resolved all of that. But as things progressed, as I got further into perimenopause, I did end up, I now have the Mirena coil.
Okay.
So that definitely has helped kind
Gotcha.
of with that. I think with the brain fog, I think as soon as I really twigged what was happening, I just pulled it all out. I started doing everything. Movement was the one thing I went to. And that was when I started running, was in 2014. And I went on to do marathons, half marathons, everything. And that was probably the single best thing that I did for the cognitive side of things.
You just knew that it would help you.
I knew. I mean, if you read all the research, the one thing we know your best friend in perimenopause all the way through and for longevity is movement. So I think I was never, as many of my friends would know in my family, I was never athletic as a child.
Well, that's great to hear,
Never.
Catherine, because people will be listening and thinking, oh, geez, I've never ran or I've never gone to the gym, but you could actually start something new.
I can tell you, I'd say, my dad used to joke with me, like the only time I'd run is if there was a bar of chocolate at the end of the kilometre or something. I wasn't sporty as a child. I used every excuse under the sun to get out of PE. You can name it. I think they used to laugh in my class at like, oh, you have your periods again, but you had them last week. And the irony, the fact that I seldom got my periods, but anything to just not do PE.
Wow.
So when I discovered running, and I'll always say to this day, one of the greatest gifts of perimenopause was that it brought movement into my life.
Wow.
Because I started running, and it was a friend of mine who said she wants to do 0 to 5K. And she said, would I start with her? And I was kind of like, oh God, I don't know. I've never run. I started with her. She gave up. I kept going.
Yeah.
And then, I went on. I did the marathon in 2018. And it's one of my top achievements of my life, because particularly going from someone who'd never run before.
Absolutely.
But I think I very quickly realized what exercise was doing for me. And I realized the feel-good hormones, the dopamine, the endorphins I was getting from running.
From a mood that was driving you.
The mood. So not only did it help with the brain fog, but it also helped with the anxiety.
Wow.
So I think I went very much for, I really wanted to look at what can I do? Just roll up my sleeves, and what can I do? And that's where I started.
Yeah.
And I think then as different things came in, I pulled on, different supports. And that's why I always kind of say, none of us are going to have the same experience. So it's all about developing your own personal menopause toolkit.
Right.
Is my toolkit the same today as I'm getting I'm 55 and I am just about to hit menopause. So I'm very late.
Okay.
But that probably ties into the fact I would have been late to starting menstruation, but there isn't a lot of clinical research behind that. But if we look at that, my journey is definitely one of the longer ones.
Okay.
But
starting from what age would you say the first symptoms?
2013. So I would have been 42, 43.
Okay. That's how long it has been the span for you.
But now I'm on the cusp. I'm probably even just there. Maybe. But I think what I did in the early perimenopause years versus what I'm doing now, the foundations are still there, non-negotiable. Movement, non-negotiable. But I have made additional changes on top of it as the symptoms have come on. So let's say, for example, one of my next probably biggest symptoms that came in was vaginal atrophy, vaginal dryness.
Yes.
And it's the one symptom that, women are very reluctant to talk about.
I saw that in your email recently. You said about the statistics that 9 in 10 women
don't feel comfortable
even
to talk
saying
about
the word vagina. Yeah.
And I think, I think for me, that is the one symptom we must talk about more, because once you get the right supports, it's a game changer. So I started using local estrogen.
Okay.
And that has definitely been a great game changer. So my regime now for vaginal dryness is I use local estrogen twice a week, sometimes 3 times. if I remember.
Yeah.
I use a vaginal moisturizer not every night, but every couple of nights. And then I also take a probiotic that's specific for the vaginal microbiome.
Okay.
So to me, that's my big one that I kind of focus on now. So at
Yes.
every stage, you'll have different kind of things that come up. And I think the most important thing is don't overwhelm yourself by, like, you could look at a symptom checker, you can see 50 plus symptoms and you're like, oh my God, where do I start?
Yes.
I always say pick the symptom that's the most challenging and focus on that. I was talking to a woman yesterday and she was saying to me that, like, her sleep is so out the window.
Yes.
And she was like, she's brain fog, I have anxiety, this, that, and the other. And I was like, okay, sleep. It's the sleep you need to start with. And just don't even think about all the other things right now. Just try and focus on the sleep,
Yes.
put everything into getting sleep right, and then it becomes a domino impact.
Yes.
So some symptoms will have a domino impact. Vaginal dryness, how does that impact? Well, it does impact in terms of if sex is painful, then if you resolve the dryness there, that's going to help. It can also, if you're having recurrent UTIs as a result of it, it can help there as well.
Yes.
So all of the symptoms will generally have a knock-on impact
Yes.
somewhere else.
Yes, there's loads in that, Catherine, and I think maybe clarifying, I suppose, for anyone who's looking for there is thankfully more talk about menopause now. But what could you define for us? What is the start of perimenopause? How do you know that you're in menopause, and what's post-menopause?
Yeah,
like, what
that's
is?
a great one
Yeah.
because, you know, I find when I'm in workplaces,
Yeah.
it's the one piece that there's so much confusion
Yeah,
about, right?
there is.
And then I also find that we talk about perimenopause and menopause, but you know, we don't talk enough about is post-menopause.
No.
So if we look at the timeline and just bearing in mind there's different types of menopause, but if we talk about natural spontaneous menopause, the average age of perimenopause is 45. But, Lauren, we're not average. No one's average.
No one.
So, look, I started earlier. I'm talking to so many women who are starting in their early 40s. Depending on your ethnic background, you might start earlier as well. So it's just there as a kind of a marker, but you can start earlier than 45 and it can start later. But 45 generally, let's just say that's around when perimenopause might start. But remember, peri is really sneaky. It's really subtle.
Okay.
A lot of times it creeps up so gradually that generally I find actually it might be those people living with you who see it before you do, because they might say, gosh, maybe a bit more moody.
Okay.
Is there a bit of rage coming in? Is there a bit of anxiety? Stuff like that. Because we're waiting for big jumps to come in the periods, but you tend to find it's all happening psychologically before the periods start to change.
Okay.
Then the culminating point, think of the analogy of the mountain is menopause, but menopause is only one day, right?
Yes.
So it's like you climb the summit of the mountain, you're there for a day. The average age is 51. But again, ethnic background, if we take black women will tend to hit menopause at the age of 47. So it's going to be very different. But you're at the top of the mountain. You're just there for one day. You have to come down.
And what is that day?
So that is menopause. So that's you've gone 12 months without a period. And that's basically like a birthday, right?
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that the symptoms, bang, they're gone.
Yes.
If only it was that easy. You have to come back down off the mountain. And this is one thing, I get so many messages about this, you know, on social media. It's like women are excited. I've gone 12 months. Yay, you know, all the symptoms are stopped and you're kind of like, oh, sorry. I got to burst your bubble. Because it's going to take a couple of years for the majority of women before the symptoms calm down. So let's say I hit menopause at 51. The chances are it's going to be 55, 56 before all the symptoms start to calm. And the last symptom that will go will be generally the vasomotor symptoms, the hot flushes and the night sweats.
Okay.
So if you look at that journey, if you break it up, perimenopause and post-menopause, they're the crucial parts of the journey. And I think we really have to move away from thinking it's all about perimenopause, because post-menopause, those initial years can be just as challenging
Okay.
as perimenopause. The difference is that maybe now you don't have the heavy periods to contend with.
Okay.
But what you might have is the urinary issues might be becoming more challenging. The anxiety, the moods can still be there. The cognitive, the brain fog. We know the brain recalibrates when it comes into postmenopause, but that settling down period takes time.
Okay.
So it's kind of, and I think it's really important that women understand that, because otherwise they're thinking, okay, I'm at 11 months, I've 1 month to go, and now I'll be like, get out of jail.
Yes. Yes.
The period, the symptoms will all go. But that's not the case. And a lot of women get disappointed
Okay.
because they're expecting it to all go.
Yes. And I've also heard the contrary, that they kind of thought that once I turn, 45, 50, I'm going to have hot flashes for the rest of my life. I've heard that too, but it does.
I'm 55.
Yeah.
I've never had a hot flush.
There you go.
I've had night sweats, probably earlier, maybe in the kind of mid perimenopause years. But it's not a foregone conclusion. You're going to get all of the symptoms. And then there's different symptoms that will come at different stages. And I think that's a really important point, because you just don't know what's going to happen. And the other thing is that we know 1 in 4 women will go through menopause with no symptoms.
Okay.
And I'm in workplaces. The ones we're jealous of.
Yeah, exactly.
I would be in workplaces, and I'll talk about that, and you have some women saying, oh, they're so lucky. And then you'll have someone, that's me.
Yeah.
And here's a real kicker,
Yeah.
Lauren. This happened about 3 weeks ago. I was queuing up in our lovely local coffee shop, and there was a woman behind me, and she recognised me, and she said, do you mind if I ask you a question? I said, yeah, no, sure. And I was thinking, God knows what symptom this is going to be about. But anyway, she turned around and she said, I think there's something wrong with me.
Okay.
I said, okay. I said, and what symptom is it? And she said, no, I have no symptoms, and I'm 54. So have I not gone through menopause? My doctor says I have.
Oh, wow.
I haven't had a period for 12 months. My FSH level is really high. My doctor says I'm fully into postmenopause. I never had a symptom. And I was laughing. I said, no, you're one of the lucky ones. So I think that's really important.
Yes.
It's not a foregone conclusion. You're going to have symptoms.
Okay.
Now, we do know, on the other hand, we know 25% of women will suffer severely.
Yes.
But I think it's really important to be mindful of that, because what I am seeing, there's a lot of fear out there, particularly around younger women maybe coming into the perimenopause years, thinking, oh my God, this is going to be horrendous, and et cetera, et cetera. But you don't know until you start your journey.
Yes.
Because we all have a very individual journey.
Yes. And thinking about that into the future, is it helpful for us to understand the journey that our mums and our maybe our grandmothers went on, or
I think where that's beneficial is when we talk about POI, premature ovarian insufficiency, a very early form of menopause, because we know with POI there's a genetic link, and we know that if it was somewhere in your family, maybe a grandmother or mum, we know the chances are the same will happen to you. And that can be very important from a fertility perspective, a longevity, all over health perspective. But in terms of understanding, am I going to have the same experience? I don't believe so. And the reason I say that is because, Lauren, we are living in a very different time to our parents.
Yes.
If I look at the stresses we have today are very different to the stresses our mums would have had and our grannies. So I think life is different. Life moves at a different pace. And I think probably one of the greatest challenges we do have in relation to an additional impact to menopause is stress.
yes.
You know, and I think, and I'll caveat that now, that my head is melted by all of the posts on social media about cortisol, when I think it's really important to understand, yes, cortisol is aligned with stress, but you and I wouldn't be sitting here today if we didn't have cortisol.
Absolutely not. We wouldn't be awake.
Exactly. And we all need cortisol. So like everything on social media, I think we've got to keep balanced in terms of the information that's there, and understand that cortisol is not an enemy. It's all about keeping it in balance.
Yes, absolutely, Catherine. So I suppose I love what you said there about we do live in different times to our moms and our grandmothers and things like that. So is that to say then as well that we can influence as a younger woman how we're going to go through perimenopause and menopause? Not to say that if you're in that 25% who has severe symptoms that it's your fault from previous life experience, but from a positive perspective, what can we do?
I think we can.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to, I'm doing a lot of research at the moment in relation to cognitive health from a future-proofing perspective. And I think a lot of the steps you can take around supporting your experience of menopause, I think also expands into your cognitive health as well, given that 2 out of 3 dementia patients are women.
Yes.
It's a condition we're more prone to. So I do think we can influence it in terms of understanding that the foundation of starting to support yourself through perimenopause is lifestyle. And we know the theme of World Menopause Day this year was lifestyle medicine. Yes. And all of the menopause societies acknowledge the fact that we have to look at lifestyle. You can then build on that with your medical support, your complementary therapies that can be of benefit. But the foundation is lifestyle. And they're the things that we can start to influence even before we come into perimenopause, if our head is in that space. Now, I'm very conscious of the fact sometimes for some women, depending on the age, etc., their head mightn't want to be anywhere near perimenopause because they may still be on a fertility journey.
Yes.
And if that is the case, you want that way down the road.
For sure.
But if that's not the case and you're open to kind of, being very proactive about things, then I think it's that lifestyle piece.
Okay.
And it's really kind of looking at movement. It's looking at different forms of movement. It's looking at, as you know yourself, we are what we eat.
Yes.
Food is everything. I love food.
Yeah,
but
me too.
Food is absolutely everything.
Yeah.
When we come to these years. And I think the other thing I would say, I'm a huge believer in the positive gift of perimenopause all the way through. And I'm speaking very much from my own experience there, but also from speaking with thousands of women as well. That yes, it can be challenging, but at the same time, once you get a handle on the symptoms and you have your management options in place, however they look for you, it is a whole new chapter in your life. If we look at the Japanese, they talk about knenkai, and that is renewal years and energy. And for me, the way I look at my experience is that it's been a huge checkpoint. Because I've been handling the symptoms, but at the same time, my lens now is so far down the road because I'm thinking, I want to be up the mountains. I want to be running. I want to be lifting weights when I'm in my 70s. Yes. So the way I look at everything I do now, it's like, it's making sure I've good foundations for a good lifespan. And also now when I'm looking at my lifespan, I'm also marrying that with my brain span as well.
Yes.
And I want the two of them to be the same. And I think that's something we're seeing a lot more research coming out in relation to that there is a huge gap between lifespan and brain span. Yes. And it's kind of starting to bridge that gap so that if I live to 80, I want my brain to be cognitively healthy at 80.
Yes.
And I think that's very important for women in particular. Okay.
And from that lens, what are you implementing in your own life, or what's the research telling you to do?
So movement.
Yeah.
A move, but now you're into different movements.
Okay.
You need the cardiovascular movements. So like for the heart, so the running, the swimming, anything that's going to get the heart pumping.
Yes.
But at the same time, you have to have the weight bearing. So now it's bringing in the weight bearing exercise for the bone and for the muscle. Yes. So I go to the gym 3 times a week, absolute non-negotiable.
Okay.
And there may be mornings I get up and I'm like, oh my God, not again. But I always feel better when I come out.
Yes.
And we all know that we feel better after exercise, whatever it is. So it's getting those two forms of movement in there. But when I look at movement now, I have a third form. So I also think about movement for the brain.
Okay.
So I'm looking at, what supports my brain? So I know that the brain is probably quite contradictory in ways because it loves routine. And it thrives on routine, but it also loves change.
Yes.
So change will keep it fresh and young and healthy. So that means, like for me, I try and read different types of books.
Okay.
Different genres.
To challenge your brain.
Challenge the brain. I'm taking up bridge in January.
Excellent.
Yes,
learning a new skill.
Yes, and also I've been told that it's really important to take something like bridge up when we're younger, so that you can really get a handle on it to play it well by the time you get to your 60s.
So you can win all the time then when you're...
Well, let's not stretch it. Let's not stretch it. I haven't even started yet. But that is one thing I'm committing to for January. I'm going to start bridge with some friends of mine. So it's like thinking about what supports the brain. And the other thing I would say is that also you've got to think about a very important aspect I now see a lot of is many women coming into perimenopause are also getting a late diagnosis of being neurodivergent. And you find that kind of collides with perimenopause.
Okay.
And that can add a whole other layer of challenges where everything is more intense. Sensitivities are more intense. So I always say, look, if you think menopause is intense, if you're neurodivergent, it's like menopause on steroids.
Yes.
Particularly around the psychological aspects of menopause. So if I'm to say to someone who's an ADHDer, do mindfulness, that's not going to happen.
No.
So it's fitting it to support you. Yeah. So for example, I always kind of say, well, if mindfulness doesn't float your boat, it's like go for a walk. Ideally I would say, if you can, don't listen to a podcast or listen to music. Just try and go out and be in nature and just give the brain a full break from all the other noise that's out there.
You can I suppose, be moving and be mindful about that movement. You're doing something, but you're not taking in more information, more stimulus, more noise.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, just take in maybe what you're looking at, take in the smells, take in the sounds, and that can be a much easier form of mindfulness where the body is like just getting it in a more calming way. But again, that will support the brain.
Yes.
So what we have to think about, when we think about movement, yes, cardio, yes, weight bearing, but we cannot forget the brain.
I love that.
So it's bringing in the new activities whilst also retaining the routines that make things easier for the brain.
Yes.
But you have to bring the new things in, but they don't have to be hard. It can be listening to new music, cooking a new dish.
Okay.
Because that gives the brain a challenge.
Yes. I've even heard people say go a different route on your walk.
I said 100%.
Go the opposite way.
Yeah, but when I go up the mountains, like a lot at the weekends, but I do reverse routes because I don't want to keep going the same way. Yes. I seldom bring the phone with me.
Yes.
But if I do, maybe it's just because I want to do a video, or otherwise in case something happened and maybe I'm on my own. Yeah. But I will not be on the phone.
No.
Because I'm there and I bring the five senses in. I look at what I can hear, what I can taste. Like I'm the nutter up the mountain, touching the trees, the leaves, everything.
Brilliant. A literal tree hugger. Yeah. I'm a bit like that, honest to God.
Oh no, that is me.
Yeah. I'm all about that.
But I know that like most Fridays, I will go up the mountains in the afternoon because that's after an intense week, that brings me down.
Okay.
And it's my grounding and it replenishes.
Yes.
That's my refilling my tank.
Okay.
But I think we all have to find what refills your tank.
Yes.
And that will be different for all of us. But I think it's just don't forget that movement for the brain. And there's so many other loads of things you can do around that. And they just are simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's key. And I think that so much of what you say is great for brain health is also going to help with the other symptoms. One of which that I'm often asked about as well, and that we've talked about, Catherine, before, is about like weight management. And in the menopause, you know, noticing a change in your weight or your shape, or maybe you've always been healthy even and you've always done movement, but now for some reason you're gaining weight. What would you say to women who are starting to notice that for themselves? Like what?
And it's for one, I'd say you are not on your own.
No.
I mean, I was size 8, size 10 for years until perimenopause.
Okay.
And then it all changed. And the thing is, remember, perimenopause is subtle and sneaky. So that weight starts to creep up really gradually. And it's still all of a sudden, I remember looking at it. It was actually photos from my book launch. And I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, my face looks chubby. Or I just felt, compared to photos I'd had before, I just noticed it. And that's where, but now I'm the person, I don't get up on the scales.
Yeah.
So
it's just how you feel.
I very much go by how I feel and how my jeans are fitting.
Yes.
And I think weight is a very emotive topic. And I think it's the one aspect of our lives we've got to practice compassion.
Yes.
Because we can be so hard on ourselves and we can go on these mad, strict diets that you know, the way I look at it is we've one life. I love food. So it's just about understanding the good foods that your body is really going to enjoy in these years. But at the same time, not torturing yourself. And I think that's really important because there's enough going on without then bringing, you know, another kind of, you know, a rod to bash yourself with, you know. So I think, yes, we know weight distribution changes.
Because of the hormone
Because of the hormonal changes. We know that before you come to perimenopause, you tend to have weight on your bum, your thighs, and of course then it all shifts around the waist.
Yes.
And then it's harder to move weight when you're in perimenopause.
Okay.
And it's not like, you know, God, often I hear, you know, people will say, oh, just move more. Oh, shoot me with that statement. Like, just shoot me, because that's only a minor part of the puzzle. Yes. When it comes to weight management in these years, there's loads of different pieces we have to bring together that will kind of help manage weight and then sustain weight in this point in time, but remember with that long-term lens on as well, because you're also, as you're doing that, you're concentrating on your bone health, your muscle health, your heart health, and your cognitive health at the same time.
Yes.
But I think the most important thing I would say to people is, you know, please, please, please be compassionate. And if anyone is thinking of starting to kick off a diet before Christmas, please, just
not the
you
time.
know, well, please. I mean, I think, look, I think a great time to reset. There's 2 times of the year I love to reset. Actually, probably 3, but January and September.
Yes.
I just love them.
Start of the year and start of the school year.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yes.
That's probably why I like September.
Yes.
January, I love January. I love the freshness, the fresh mornings, the blue skies. And to me, it's like I feel like a Duracell bunny in January.
Yes.
Because I just feel so kind of, new year ahead. I've loads of plans in my head, all that kind of stuff. And that's when I have the energy to start thinking about, okay, I'm going to knuckle down. This is what I know from all the work I've done on myself in the past. This is what I know works when it comes to managing weight in menopause with that future lens on as well. And it's the same in September, because during the summer, really, am I going to be thinking about it when I'm on holidays in somewhere nice like Italy, eating lovely food? No, thank you.
No.
We have only one life.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's really important that we enjoy it. And I think food is a great part of community. It brings people together. It's time, you know, ideally your family are sitting down to enjoy food. I have 3 boys. I mean, like... You know, when we go out, if we're on holidays or something, I mean, it's all about where's the next food, you know, where's lunch, where's dinner, where's breakfast, where's everything. And it's like they're driven.
Yes.
They're driven by food,
yes.
you know, but it makes for great conversations. But it's, I think it's really important to understand that to have a positive relationship with food
Yes.
And to understand that, are there days where I'm going to, go for a quick meal or grab a takeaway or something? Of course there is, because of life.
Yeah.
So that's where I think we've got to practice compassion.
Yes.
Really important.
And on the topic of that, on compassion, isn't it like, I suppose for anyone who is, I'm trying my best, I'm doing everything.
Yeah.
Do we accept that, we have a different body now? Do we need to change it?
Yeah.
Is it realistic to think that I want to look like how I looked like 10 years ago? Maybe
Yeah.
not,
Yeah. Yeah.
and are we doing it for our own reasons, or is it pressure?
Yeah. From society. I think that's so important.
Yeah.
And I think we've got to understand that everything is up for grabs when it comes to perimenopause. I always say it's a deeply psychological chapter in a person's life.
Yes.
And that also comes with the fact you're changing internally. Psychologically, things are probably in a whirl. But you're also changing physically too. And your body is changing. And sometimes we can resist that.
Yes.
And I think also what I would say is that also sometimes they're first, not the majority of women, but for some women, they can actually lose weight and lose too much weight when they come into these years. So that is, it's a minority of women, but it still does happen. But I think everything goes through a journey, and our physical body is not left out of that.
Yes.
So am I ever going to be size 8 or 10 again? No. Do I want to be back how I looked at 18 in a bikini? No, I don't think so, because I guess I'm happy with where I'm at now, because what I would say is what I love about my body now is it is stronger than it ever was.
Yes.
My physical body is much stronger now than I was at 18.
Yes.
I can lift heavier boxes. I can lift heavier shopping bags than I could 5 years ago.
Yes.
So that is that's a strength that I've worked on. But it's a strength that I think every single woman should work on, that upper body strength in particular, because when we think about what's going to keep us out of nursing homes, well, incontinence is a big one, but also breaks, fractures, frailty.
Yeah.
So if we can keep ourselves strong, that's good for us, but also for those around us.
We're likely to be more independent.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the one thing, like my mum was such an independent person until Alzheimer's.
Okay.
Until she got dementia, and her form was Alzheimer's. And that just robs you of that independence. So I think that's why I am so conscious of the longevity aspect. But I think it's just, it's really important to invest the time into you, because often we're caught up juggling 50 million other things.
Yes.
But it's bringing it back to, what can I do for myself? But I know I've gone off on a tangent there, but when we bring that back to body image, that your body, you may not fit into the size 8, the size 12, the size 14 jeans that you once fitted into, but your body might feel stronger. You might be happier.
Why do you need to?
Yeah. You might be happier with where you are now.
Yes.
And I think that's much more important than fitting into any X size, whatever that is.
Yes.
So I think it's that whole messaging. And if we look, there's some great people putting some really positive messages out there in relation to aging, but there's also some people, I think, who are putting a mixed message out that I'm muscle woman, I am a size 10. Come on, I don't even think of that, because that's not where I want to be.
No.
I just want to feel strong in my body. And I think that's what we should focus on.
Yes.
That psychological inner strength, but also that physical inner strength as well.
Yes.
And that having that balance.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, the shift, there is the physical shift, but is there power in having gone through the journey yourself? And obviously you speak with and work with so many women, is there a confidence shift, or can there be for a woman who's maybe feeling more like they're resisting this rather than embracing it? How do you get to that point and then kind of be like the Japanese kaneki where you're embracing the renewal of life.
Yeah.
How do you go from feeling like I hate this into like, you know, yeah.
And I wish, I don't know if there's one thing, I wish everyone could understand that.
Yeah.
But it's very hard when you're in the midst of it and you're not sleeping because of night sweats and hot flushes and your libido's gone out the window and you have vaginal dryness and anxiety. Oh my God, how can you even be thinking there's positives to this? But what I would say is, once you can get a handle on the symptoms, once you get your management options, whatever they are for you, whether it's HRT, whether it's acupuncture, reflexology, whatever it is, once you get a handle on the symptoms, that's when you can start changing the lens. And that's when you can start to see, okay, now I start to see the light. And I think, you know, that was my journey.
Yeah.
You know, I was very, very proactive in relation to the symptoms.
Yes.
I was always trying to be a step ahead as opposed to reactive. And so for me, I guess I was always looking at what's this giving me? And I will say when I was in, I think for me, I would probably say the greatest gift has been on the psychological side.
Yeah.
And I think I'm a stronger version of myself today than what I was 10 years ago.
Okay.
And that's because it's challenged me mentally, emotionally, but it's made me look at myself and it's made me, I'm so much stronger on boundaries than I was 10 years ago. And that's what many women will say that's one of the greatest gifts of post-menopause.
Yes.
That ability to say no.
You get clarity.
You get clarity and you start to understand, like, you know, what is supporting you, what's helping you, what's lifting you up, as opposed to kind of maybe what's dragging you down.
Yes.
And, you know, that's a really important part of the journey. I also think that, you know, when you're pushed on the psychological realm, you literally, you can run, you can hide, you can put your head in the sand and ignore it all. Or you can actually decide, no, actually, I'm going to lift up my sleeves. I'm going to look at this. And that's what I did.
Yeah.
So when I started to see anxiety coming in, I ran from it. I was like, oh my God, I was never an anxious person before. And I was like, what is this
That's
about?
what I hear so often. I never had this. I was always calm.
Yeah. And I was like, what is this about? Like, this is far too scary. And I definitely resisted it for a while.
Okay.
But then when I started to get anxious, I sat with it and I started to understand, okay, why? What is making me anxious? Yes. And yes, the hormones can have an impact, but you can be guaranteed there's something else happening there that's triggering.
Yes.
So it's trying to look at, yes, the hormones maybe are going to flip you quicker, but there'll be a trigger there somewhere.
Okay.
So that's what I started to look at. And I have this circle of emotions. I was the nerd going around like in my diary with this circle. But I literally sit there and I'm like, okay, I'm anxious. And then I track it back and I was trying to figure out, okay, why? Why am I anxious? Okay. And I remember even recently, so my mum passed in March. And I remember one day I was taking the washing out, the washing machine or something or other. And I don't know, the door wouldn't close. I was getting really angry. I remember I just sat back on my honkers and I was there and I was like, why? What's making me angry? Yeah. The door was only a trigger.
Yes.
Why I was angry? Because I was sad. And we know that anger, underneath it, there's generally sadness. So, and that was grief. And of course, you have to go through all the stages of that. So, but I think it's just not being afraid to look beneath the bonnet at what's happening. Now, I will also caveat that, Lauren, and say that, look, in some cases, we know that past trauma can come up very viscerally in menopause. So I would say to anyone, if that is the case, you know, please make sure you get the right support, like trauma therapy. EMDR would be very well-known form of therapy, you know, working one-to-one with a counsellor. I went back, I did counselling. I started probably in the middle of my perimenopause years. I still go every 2 weeks, and best thing ever, because there's always stuff in your head, in your life that maybe you need help with, you need to figure it out. And it's the best thing I've ever done.
Yeah. I also went on a journey doing counselling therapy before and found it hugely beneficial. And like that, it would be coming around and I'd be dreading the session. I'd be like, oh, I don't really actually feel fine this week. I don't want to like bring myself down by getting into like something that's maybe not even there. But there was always something there. And it's not like I go to every session, I cry, do you know? But like, but just, and I wouldn't be the kind of person who would say that I have a particular trauma experience in my life. I feel very grateful to be able to say that. But the fact, I think, and the reason that I say that is because that's not the only reason that you could go to therapy or to get counselling.
Not at all. No. And I think it's one thing when I'm in workplaces, I'm a massive, and I was when I was a director in the bank, I was a huge proponent of employee assistance programs, and I would have encouraged loads of my team to use it. And it's one thing I talk about in workplaces, because in perimenopause through to postmenopause, the one thing everybody needs is support.
Yes.
And you can get that support at home or in relationships, friendships, etc. It's really nice to have an independent piece of support. And you, like employee assistance programs, they are, take it from me, 100% confidential.
Yes.
And they are.
Okay, that's really key.
They're a no-brainer.
Yeah.
They are they're confidential.
People might
they're
worry
free.
that it gets feed.
No, you don't get anything. You don't get anything.
It's not going to impact your job.
I know as a manager, I never saw a report. I never saw anything, never wanted to.
No.
All you might see is the number of people who've used it.
Completely anonymous.
That's all. That's all you get. So
avail of those. They're free supports available to you.
Big time. Yeah. Big time. And remember that like it does not have to be a trauma. It doesn't have to be a grief. It can just be life. If I look at I guess one of the really poignant parts for me in perimenopause, I lost my dad very suddenly at the age of 21. So it was a real trauma at the time. And I was in college. They put me through counselling and it was brilliant. It was my first introduction to counselling. And I thought, this is a game changer. So I was always very positive about counselling. But then when I came into perimenopause, all of a sudden, oh Lord, of course you can have really vivid dreams and nightmares. But I started to have these dreams again about my dad's funeral. And I'd literally wake up, my dad's alive. Oh, and then you go into a cold sweat. Or I'd wake up and it was literally like the funeral had just happened. It was that visceral. And that's the way trauma can come back when we're in the perimenopause chapter. So that really scared me. And particularly because I really thought I'd worked through a lot of that grief, but I found then I went back to counselling and I didn't. There was still some remnants there that I just had to let go.
Yes. So
that for me was it was another stepping stone. Yes. In terms of, and I can remember, Lauren, sitting at home, it was during COVID, having a Zoom, and I was just like, I don't want to go here. Because it was so, losing my dad was probably one of the greatest traumas of my life. And I didn't want to go there.
Yeah, you almost wanted to, not bring it up.
Bypass it.
Yes.
And I remember the counsellor we went into things. I just remember, oh my God.
You needed to burst the bubble almost.
I went back there and I just remember the sadness and everything. But look, it was, what I'm saying is, I know it can be painful, but if you have the right support, it can also be freeing to let you move on to the next chapter. And that's like, if we go back to the Japanese talk about menopause as the second spring.
Yes.
So it's taking from parts of the journey that maybe you need to go through. And it is that shedding where you're kind of coming out into, a more freer, a more empowered version of yourself.
Yes. Yeah, Catherine, there's so much power in that. And I think also realizing that you deserve that time, that 60 minutes a week, 45 minutes with therapist or counsellor, or you deserve to have a GP appointment. Like in terms of, if I go back to when you first experienced perimenopause and you knew what was going on at that point, what was your first protocol, or what would your first protocol be for women who are just starting to notice that they might be going through? Like, do they go to their GP? Is that?
Well, I think for me with the heavy periods, I did because I had an incident where I flooded out in the restaurant and it was horrendous. And I did go to my GP. I had a scan done and everything, and there was nothing wrong with me. I didn't even have, I was there thinking I might have fibroids, it might be something, nothing, not a thing. So, you know, I think you have to, your GP is a very important part of this journey. And look at the longevity. This isn't quick.
Not at
you know,
all.
there's years in this. So I'm a huge believer in local community support. So I go to my local community GP. She's amazing. I love her. She's just brilliant. We have a brilliant relationship. And she's a fantastic support. So like, you know, she's been there all the way through. But at the same time, you know, I guess, look, she knows the work I do. She's like, you know what you need to do, or, you know. But at different stages, there will be different things that you do have to change or tweak. And I've hypothyroid as well.
Okay.
So I do have to keep a close eye on my thyroid, because with L-troxin, and particularly in perimenopause, things can really go kind of out of kilter. And like at the moment, I'm reducing my medication because of the way the hormonal interchange and everything that's happening. So you do have to keep a close eye on that. So I think, you know, that's where your doctor is really important. And I think also being able to make an informed choice in relation to a conversation around HRT,
Yes.
The first medical port of call for supporting the symptoms of menopause, but also understanding your blood tests and is there anything else going on there?
Yes.
So I would have been very clued into that because of the thyroid. I was diagnosed hypothyroid after my second child was born.
Okay.
So I've had it a good number of years. So that meant I always had to have my bloods done every year, sometimes twice a year. But at the same time, you're looking at other markers in the bloods, because there's other underlying conditions that can look very similar to perimenopause. The thyroid is one. B12 deficiency is another one. Being low in iron, being anemic is another one. So there's many other ways that the blood tests are very beneficial. Are they going to be helpful to tell me, Catherine, you're in year 5, month 2 of perimenopause? Not a hope. No, because our hormones are changing every single day. They're beneficial when I've hit menopause.
Yes.
And the FSH, the follicle stimulating hormone, goes quite high. But other than that, though, they are really helpful for keeping an eye on everything. Like my GP, every year she'll check my CA 125 or 25, you know, the one for cancer. It's one of the markers, things like that, because there's cancer in my family.
Sure.
And it's looking at your cholesterol, it's triglyceride. It's just, and I always say to women, just get to know your bloods, get a printout, start to understand the
and
levels.
ask about them as well, not just like results okay, thumbs up, you know, the text coming through. Yeah.
If, like, for example, vitamin D is a big one. So if I'm like 20 in vitamin D, that's not high enough. I want to be up about, you know, 55, 60 or
it's
higher.
Not just like, you're not deficient, but you want to actually be optimizing for health.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And same with B12. You know, that's a big one that you want to be, again, you just don't want to be in the low level. You want to be well in there.
Yes.
So it's understanding the levels. That's really empowering.
And you do that by, I suppose, coming to your appointment, whether it's with your GP or another healthcare professional, prepared, I suppose.
Yeah. And I think and it's feeling that it's okay to ask for a copy of your bloods.
Yes. Or booking a double appointment so you're not stressed. Like saying, I do want to have a conversation about this. So 10 minutes I know won't be enough because I have this list of questions. Yeah.
And I think, you know, I think that's where it's like, it is important. It is important to know that your doctor is up to date and well informed in relation to menopause, because unfortunately, I do still hear about women saying that, you know, they're presenting classical perimenopause symptoms. Everything else is fine. There's no underlying conditions, and maybe they're being prescribed antidepressants.
Yes.
Now, it's not to say, I know antidepressants do have a very important role to play when it comes to menopause, particularly if you can't take HRT and if the clinical picture is very much identifying there's depression there. But if it's much more classical perimenopause, then really the first medical port of call is HRT. So I think that's where the benefit of having a doctor who is accredited, like a BMS trained menopause expert, that's of benefit.
That's the British Menopause Society.
Yeah,
yes.
and you'll generally, like, there's trainers in Ireland, like Dr. Caoimhe Hartley, Dr. Brenda Moore, and I think Dr. Deirdre Lundy. They all train doctors here in Ireland in relation to making sure they're, fully up to date in relation to menopause.
Yes.
And I just think that's really important. A lot of look, we've got to remember, doctors are treating babies all the way through to our aging parents. So menopause is just one chapter in the journey, but now it is a big chapter. But at the same time, it's understanding, unfortunately, at the moment here in medical school, menopause gets nowhere near the time it needs. I know it's the same when you're studying pharmacy.
For sure.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And that's another thing that we need to change. But I think what you need to do to be empowered is just to, make the best of your GP consultation when you go, know what you want to talk about. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Be empowered.
Yeah.
It's your body. And I think, remember that nobody knows your body as well as you do.
Absolutely, Catherine. I think that was very powerful. I think that's a great point to wrap on. I think in 2026, if you're listening to this at the start of the year, this is your year to ask for help, to create space for yourself, and to take on board all of what you said and listen to your body. Isn't
100%.
it?
Yeah, totally. Go back to trust your gut.
Yeah.
We forget a lot about our gut instinct, and there's a reason that name exists.
Exactly.
Because you know your body's better than anybody, and it's really important to just go with that, empower yourself, so that if you're proactive through these years, you'll thrive through menopause.
Yes, the proactive approach, absolutely.
Yes.
So people can find you, Catherine, at Wellness Warrior.
I'm on all the social media platforms, and my website is wellnesswarrior.ie. So
excellent.
Follow me there.
Make sure to follow Catherine. I learn so much from her all the time. As she said, we cover menopause, perimenopause, and pharmacy, but it's constant learning, and there's constantly new information coming out there. So I'm always trying to keep on top of it. So you're a great source of information for me.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks so much for joining us, Catherine.
Thanks, Lauren. That was great. Thank you.
That's it for today's episode of The Wellness Script. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit subscribe and review with 5 stars. It really helps us to grow and keep these evidence-based conversations coming with top experts to help you on your health and wellness journey. You can follow us at Wellness Script Pod on socials for more. And a huge thank you to our sponsor, Sona Vitamins, Ireland's longest established nutritional supplement producer. Catch you next Wednesday with a brand new episode, Your Prescription for Better Living.